How's it going, Knicks fans? Welcome back to Fireside Knicks with your boys, Alex and Ryan. Yesterday, legal tampering starts, and it feels, you know what, man? It feels like legal tampering doesn't mean absolutely anything. Like the second the freaking clock hits where they can start to sign players, they're already lined up to go. It's crazy to me. Like, they're talking somehow, and even though it's illegal, whatever it might be, like they all are just like one after another signing. Like, there's no way they weren't in contact before this. But you know what? The Knicks didn't do anything. They're sitting patient. They're sitting quiet, trying to make their moves. We're going to talk about the remaining free agents. We'll list them off, say yay or nay, and then we'll kind of talk about any in-depth that we think could be good fits on this roster. But Ryan, before we dive into the list here, how you do today, my friend?
I'm doing good. I know a lot of Knicks fans were like weirdly upset, like, oh, Leon Rose is sleeping. Then what are the Knicks doing? But no one signed that I thought the Knicks should have gotten. And the only guy you could argue is Bruce Brown, but I think you and I could agree. And we said this. We were spot on with this. He was going to get paid a lot more than he should have for next year because of the fact that he won a championship with the Nuggets. That's $20+ million. I know they have a team or player option that they can decline in year 2, but Bruce Brown is getting an opportunity to start with Indiana. He was not getting that opportunity here. For as much as I criticize RJ Barrett, you were not benching RJ Barrett for Bruce Brown. Let's get real here, guys. That was never happening. Bruce Brown is not a very consistent shooter, so like it would be weird to say, oh, RJ's not a consistent shooter, so let's bench him for another inconsistent shooter on much lower volume. So no disrespect to Bruce Brown, glad he got his bag, but I think he's just a better fit with Indiana than the Knicks. But kind of looking at this free agency class, as you mentioned, tampering, that's legal tampering. Like, everyone tampers all the time. We know this, right? The Knicks got hit with like a fine, or like they lost a pick or whatever because they were tampering with Jalen Brunson. Everyone tampers. But obviously the guy that you're expecting to have a lot of buzz with the Knicks is Donte DiVincenzo. All the signs point to the Knicks being the team that wants Donte DiVincenzo. The Knicks want the shooting. But there are still some other interesting guys out in the market. And, the one guy I wanted to kind of bring up that I think could be low key, who declined his player option with the Chicago Bulls, is Derrick Jones Jr. Now, the Knicks are looking to move Obi Toppin. There's some steam with him, and funny enough, Indiana, who has Bruce Brown now. So there's steam there. I think that ends up getting done. So the Knicks are going to inevitably need a backup power forward. And while Derrick Jones is a smaller power forward, he's only 6'5", his defensive impact and offensive impact are pretty interesting. When he was on the court, the Bulls had a 108.9 defensive rating. With him on the court, it was 113.8. That's a dramatic difference. That's you going from an elite defense to one of the worst defenses in the NBA. His shooting isn't elite. He shot 33.8% from three on 1.3 attempts a game, but he also doesn't really factor much into the offense. He only shot 3.6 times a game last year. He's more of a defense guy. I think that's kind of what the Knicks need in that backup role anyways. Emmanuel Quickley's a ball handler and a shot creator. You imagine that Josh Hart is going to get his shots up. If the Knicks sign Donte DiVincenzo, they're going to have him get his shots up as well. Isaiah Hartenstein, obviously, he doesn't take a lot of shots either, but you do like having him in the interior to just pass a little, take a pass to and have him back down to center, especially since he's more physical than a lot of the backup bigs out there. He's a huge dude. So having a guy who gives them more defense and a little bit of shooting, or at least more shooting than Toppin did, definitely could be interesting here. So I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on him, Alex. And do you think the Knicks are going to be active in that backup power forward market, especially if Toppin goes?
I mean, look, the truth is Obi Toppin, he's labeled a power forward. He doesn't necessarily play like one. You know what I mean? He's more of this like kind of transition, athletic, freak kind of guy. His physicality in the paint is not like Julius Randle's whatsoever. And he's not really a great shooter, right? Derrick Jones, you could even argue this could be a drop-off in terms of offensive production. I think Obi Toppin's a better scorer. But as a defensive piece, you're getting substantially better. And I think that's where the Knicks are going to say, do we swap offense for defense? And we just give those opportunities, those looks and reps and shot opportunities to other people like a Donte DiVincenzo, whatever it might be. I don't think – it really depends. Like the market right now is crazy. I don't really think – I don't know how much he's going to get, Derrick Jones. I don't know what this kind of free agent acquisition would look like in terms of, market value. But if it's going to cost you a little bit of cash, you're better off just keeping Obi unless he's going to be included. Look, if the Knicks go out and sign a guy like this, you can pretty much guarantee someone's getting traded. It could be Obi, it could be somebody else. They got to make roster spots somewhere for these guys. And the reality is they still have a lot of guys on this team and, bringing back ones as well. So someone's got to go. Someone's got to get moved. So if you're bringing in a guy like this, you're probably moving somebody else, or you're replacing like Derrick Rose's spot. And, shout out to Derrick Rose for signing a 2-year deal with the Grizzlies. I mean, Rose, in my opinion, is kind of done. He looked a little bit out of shape towards the end of the season there, but, love the guy. Happy he got another chance. Obviously one of our fan favorites, but Derek Jones Jr. is definitely an interesting player. Always happy to hear your perspectives below on this kind of player. And if you think he'd be a good fit, swapping him for Obi, I'm not necessarily sure it's my preferred move, but if the Knicks have to make a move, I guess it makes sense. Now looking at kind of the list here, we'll rattle them off and kind of go through each one and say, okay, we like this, we don't like this. The first one, non-Bird, Russell Westbrook. Stay away from Russell Westbrook, in my opinion. You have Emmanuel Quickly. That's your backup point guard. That's your sixth man. That's your guy that's going to come in and score. You don't need Russell Westbrook. He's going to be overpriced. He's 34 years old now. He's tailing towards the end of his career. He looked like a little bit rejuvenated with the Clippers. But I just, people, they still have him labeled as a starter. He started 21 out of 21 games with the Clippers, but only like a couple games with the Lakers. I don't like the idea of bringing in Westbrook simply because he kind of messes with your team chemistry. Like he's an individual, whereas we have a team right now. And I feel like that may not be the best fit. So, Ryan, I imagine you're kind of out on the entire Russell Westbrook situation or theory as well.
Yeah, so I don't think it's a good fit. I think Russ worked well with the Clippers because they needed a ball handler at the point guard position, especially off the bench. I thought that was just a good fit for Russell Westbrook, and basketball's all about fits. Now, obviously Russell Westbrook's going to go in as a first ballot Hall of Famer. I understand he doesn't have a ring and all that stuff, but he's one of the best point guards of our generation. I understand that, but he's at an advanced age. He isn't the player he was 5 years ago, and as you mentioned, most notably, you have Emmanuel Quickly. Emmanuel Quickly does that role of ball handling, shot creator off the bench a lot better than Russell Westbrook does. He's a better defender than Russell Westbrook. And I just don't think that's a fit there. I know there were some rumors a couple years ago when he was like being shopped around, like the Knicks might be interested, but I think the Knicks are kind of out on Russell Westbrook.
Yep, I would agree with that. And looking over at the next player here, we got D'Angelo Russell. He's probably not going to be. He's also not a good option. You got Quickly and Jalen Brunson. The point guards really are like kind of stay away from them. You have Eric Gordon, a little bit older, 34 years old. Malik Beasley is interesting. He still has bird rights, so they still have an opportunity to sign him. Will Barton, Christian Wood, center there, don't need him. Brooke Lopez, freaking love Brooke Lopez. He's probably going back to Milwaukee though, for being honest. Like the guy steps in and just produces. Like he has 15 years of experience, 35 years old. The guy can hit shots. An interesting one I want to discuss with you is Kelly Oubre. Apparently the Charlotte Bobcats or Hornets rather, are going to be letting him go. And that's kind of an interesting one. I feel like Kelly Oubre is a guy that was linked to the Knicks in the past as a small forward, certainly an interesting player. But at the same time, I don't think he really fits our needs and requirements. Not really a good 3-point shooter. I don't necessarily like this fit for the Knicks. What do you think about Kelly Oubre?
Yeah, he takes a lot of threes and he's not very efficient. He takes a lot of shots. I imagine he's going to get a starting role somewhere, and I don't think that's going to be here. Again, if we're talking about, what the Knicks would be doing with their starting lineup, again, we've been on here very critical of a lot of players on the team, not in like a demeaning way, but more so just pointing out what the Knicks need to get better at. Again, you're not replacing RJ Barrett or Quentin Grimes with Kelly Oubre. That would be a horrible fit. That'd be a horrible idea, and the Knicks are not doing that. You mentioned Malik Beasley. I thought that's an interesting name because he's such a good shooter. But I don't know about the defensive effort, the defensive production. I don't want to question a player's effort. But in his career, he's averaging nearly 6 attempts from three on 37.8% shooting. A couple years ago, really for the last few years, he's been averaging 8 attempts from three. The last 3 years, averaging 8.2 attempts from three on 37.3% efficiency. I wonder if the Knicks will be interested. I think he would be a backup option if they couldn't get DiVincenzo, because I think the Knicks really like the idea of having a defensive-oriented, a guard or wing for the bench or the starting lineup. But Beasley, man, that would be. If you could add him to this team, considering how much they need spacing, I'd be on board for that. Depends on the price, of course. Depends on, what moves are made. If you make a trade for Paul George, if you have to move a guy like Quentin Grimes, and you add a Dante DiVincenzo, do you now suddenly have, a little more flexibility to bring in a guy like Malik Beasley and try to get back the shooting aspect of what you're losing with Grimes? Who knows? But I think he's at least an interesting name to talk about. But Oubre, not seeing it there.
Yeah, I mean, neither. Not really feeling the whole Oubre train of thought, but I will say this, you keep bringing up Dante DiVincenzo. This is a guy we love. We freaking want Dante DiVincenzo, and everyone's saying, the reports are indicating he has 4 meetings on the dock. I think Stefan Bondi of the New York Daily News suggested he has 4 meetings. One of them is with the Knicks, and the Villanova trio would be dope. Like objectively, it'd be sick to see. You know, Josh Hart, DiVincenzo, and Jalen Brunson. Like you talk about chemistry, like it's there for the taking. The Knicks can bring in a player that has tremendous 3-point shooting. You're talking about 40% hit rate. He had 3.5 assists last year, like 4.5 rebounds. The guy is kind of just a well-rounded player. Like I think DiVincenzo's the perfect fit for what the Knicks need. He's got the mentality. He has experience as a starter. You know, we can come off the bench. The question is, like, are you going to start him over Quentin Grimes? You know, maybe you do. Maybe you just ask them to compete and the position battle ensues and you let the best player win. I think that's a great strategy. I am against the whole concept of like just giving starting jobs out. I love competition. Dante DiVincenzo and Quentin Grimes would go neck to neck, head to head for those starting minutes. And I think it would be a great situation for both of them to kind of bring the best out of each. So I do love that concept. I think that's kind of my preference if we're looking at a player that fits what the Knicks need. You guys, you have like veterans like Jay Crowder. You know, he's had some success shooting. Lonnie Walker. You know, Kendrick Nunn is a guy the Knicks were connected to a couple years back, and you know we have the point guard situation kind of figured out, so I don't think that's necessary. Jeff Green, veteran, he's almost like 37 years old. So you're probably not looking at him as anything like legitimate, more of just like a rotational piece. You know, Austin Rivers, like there's Andre Iguodala still out there. I don't even know if he's still playing. I guess he is. But you know, this is kind of a situation where like a lot of the big names were already like plucked off. Did Dylan Brooks sign back with Memphis? Did you see
no,
that?
they're not. They made a report saying they're not even thinking about bringing him back. So, and I don't want him on the Knicks. So,
yeah. So he's got problems, right? He's got problems with his mentality or something like that.
Yeah, it's rough too because, you know, spacing wise doesn't provide you a lot of shooting. You know, defensively, he's a tough defender. Like, don't get me wrong. Like he brings the defensive intensity to the court. And I think he would be a good role player somewhere, but you know, a lot of the off the court stuff, a lot of the comments, you know, it's not going to sit very well, right? It's like the concept of having a backup quarterback that doesn't make, like, you want your backup quarterback to not, like, the media doesn't even know the guy, right? Like that's the ideal situation. Your backup quarterback can't be making noise for you. That's kind of the situation you feel like with role players in the NBA. You don't want them making noise for you. And I think you made a really good point in terms of like just the top of the free agent class. There really isn't a top of the free agent class. Like it was like Kyrie Irving and Fred VanVleet. And I'm sorry the Knicks weren't signing either of them. Thank God they weren't going to give $130 million to Fred VanVleet. No disrespect to the guy, but Jalen Brunson makes less than that. Like, Jeremy Grant made $160 million. I think a big takeaway from this free agency is that the Knicks really did an excellent job with a lot of the extensions they've given out. You know, we're sitting here talking about Jalen Brunson as a 4-year, $104 million player. Jeremy Grant and Fred VanVleet make significantly more money than that. And they're not better players than him. They're not. So, you know, there's that. And you mentioned DiVincenzo's like that perfect fit. Yeah, there's not a lot of guys out there that give you the defense and shooting, right? And that's exactly what the Knicks need. You know, and he's young. He's 26, right? I feel like I'd be a Jeff Green guy on a 1-year deal, but the issue is the age, right? You just always worry about, is this the year where they fall apart? And, you know, the fact that the Knicks are such a young team, right? You know, you could benefit for having a Jeff Green type on the roster. And I would be for that, but you definitely want to keep your like big pieces or like the players you imagine playing big time minutes as younger players, because this is a game that grinds on your knees. There's a lot of running, a lot of contact. This is a sport where you can get injured very easily and it breaks down your body pretty easily.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you kind of referenced Malik Beasley, and I pulled up his numbers. Interesting option there. You know, obviously shooting guard fits the bill for what we're trying to do. As a shooter, you know, he averaged 12.7 points last year, played for Utah and the Lakers. You know, shot almost 40% from the field and then 36% about there and from 3-point range. He's pretty great 3-point shooter throughout his career, and he's a high volume shooter too. So you're getting a guy that like he'll hit the shots in the corner, he'll do stuff for you. Those open shots, like you can kind of feel good about him doing that. Effective field goal rate at 52%. This is an interesting one. You know, 3.5 rebounds per game. You know, you're really looking at him to be an offensive piece more so than a defensive one, I'd imagine. But like, you know, this is I guess like my question for you would be this. Would you go with Beasley or DiVincenzo? I imagine Beasley's going to be a lot more expensive, so that's probably the difference maker if you're the Knicks.
Yeah, I think the big thing is that and the defense. It really, the Knicks need to get better defensively. They need to have better perimeter play defensively. It feels like the Knicks get shot out of the gym sometimes by teams, and that can't happen, right? Torian Prince can't go off for like 40 points. That can't happen, right? Like, no disrespect to Torian Prince, but that dude lit us up once last year. Now I can't see it. They blew multiple leads in the beginning of the year where they couldn't close games out, and that didn't get fixed until Josh Hart got here. They couldn't close out against Miami in game one. It felt like they couldn't get stops when it was needed. This team needs better perimeter play defensively. And that's why I'm such a big advocate for Dante DiVincenzo. And you mentioned like having him and Grimes compete for minutes. Number one, I think that you're going to have situations in the postseason where you're going to have to just throw your guy, the hottest guy out there, and it's going to have to come. It's going to come down to being able to play the right guys and having more options and having more good defensive and shooting pieces to put on the floor in a closing rotation in, game time situations of the postseason where it's desperation. You're just playing the guy who's playing the best. I think that helps. And number two, having minutes where these two guys share the court together. Quentin Grimes can't be asked to have the most difficult defensive matchups in the NBA again. Not saying that he's not capable of handling it, but you can't expect him to take a big offensive leap while also still having that massive defensive load. The Knicks don't have help defense for him. RJ Barrett, Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle, they were not capable of being help defenders. You didn't anticipate Jalen Brunson was going to be that. He's an undersized guard. Randle has not really been the defender that you expect him to be at his size, and Barrett took a big step back defensively. Mitchell Robinson obviously is a defensive force. He's a great presence on the boards, but he's not helping you on the perimeter. And Dante DiVincenzo helps you on the perimeter. That's why the Knicks are so interested in him. That's why the Knicks need to have a guy, whether it's him, whether they acquire someone like Paul George, whatever it may be, they need someone that's in that starting lineup that helps Quentin Grimes. Because end of the day, I think you and I can agree, the last thing we want to see is Miami with some random shooter who was an undrafted free agent shoot 40% from the three-point line, hit 5 of 6 threes in a game, and knock the Knicks out in the postseason again. Yep. That can't happen. That cannot happen.
Yeah, that's not. Well, that's the thing. Like, you look at the Heat and we have good defenders. Like Quentin Grimes, excellent defender. You know what I mean? Like RJ, I feel like he has so much untapped potential as a defender. He even said like 2 years ago or a year ago, I want to be an all NBA defensive player. Like I want to win an award for my defense. And like that hasn't been the case. Randall like occasionally shows up defensively. Like he can have good games, but altogether, like I feel like he's a little lazy at times as he puts so much effort into the offensive side. And then of course you have the monster Mitchell Robinson, who is just a freaking animal. And you got to love him, man. Like Mitchell Robinson, without him, we are a mess. Against Cleveland, that was one of the best performances I've ever seen from a center. Again, that game against Cleveland. I mean, Jared Allen came out and literally was like, Mitchell Robinson's a freaking monster. Like he just killed us. The lights were too bright. And ultimately, Mitch, big piece, really happy we ended up extending him. If he's healthy, the guy is like one of the best players on this team. It's not even close. You know what I mean? Like, of course, like you have other guys that are better in terms of specific things, but as a defensive player, he's probably our best player. And it's not even a question. And then you look at Josh Hart, man. Josh Hart's a tremendous defensive player, all effort, 100% maximum all the time. I think our defense has the capacity to be good in the right alignments. The problem is, we just need that extra guy, that one more guy that's going to make that stop. Malik Beasley has like 117 defensive rating. He's terrible. Dante DiVincenzo is at 113. So he's pretty noticeably better. He gets a couple steals. So, I do like DiVincenzo as a perfect fit for us. I think he'll elevate his game because of the chemistry that he already has with Brunson and Josh Hart. So, like rounding out this kind of episode to just like discussing like what we've already seen, the market's pretty thin. There's a lot of bird right unrestricted free agents, so like their teams have the option to try and extend them, but it seems like some of these guys will be let go. There's no one that stands out to me that like would make a significant difference in my opinion, except for DiVincenzo. I really like him. And if the Knicks are going to go out and get somebody, it's going to be a trade for a star. It's going to be a guy that like comes in and like is the third star for us. But I don't see anyone on here that like really stands out aside from Dante that I'm like, we have to go get this guy. Like this guy would make a big difference. So, that's kind of how I feel. But, guys, I'd love to hear your perspectives as always in the YouTube comments. It's always happy and awesome for us to have a good conversation down there. And, if there's anyone that's standing out to you as a potential option, always happy to hear your perspectives. And as always, my friends, make sure to like and subscribe. And we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Knicks episode.